Thank you.
You did it.
Thank you. So, okay, good evening, everybody. So I will officially call the July 14, 2022 meeting of the Historical Commission to order. The first order of business is to sorry, we have another participant, is to just take a roll call of those present. So Alan, if you just state your name and present.
Alan Bogosian, present.
Nancy?
Nancy Nelson, present.
Rebecca?
Rebecca Lemaitre, present.
Jesse?
Jesse Cataldo, present.
Okay, Melissa Sawfield, I am present. Also with us is Ann Clifford, and I just would like to formally introduce her to everyone. If you haven't met her, Ann is our new senior planner who will support us, the HDC, the CPC, and I think there's a lot of other stuff that she does that I don't really know, but that's plenty in my book. So officially welcome, Ann. And I'd also like to just, for consideration, because we do have one outside guest tonight, our presentation, Simone Monteleone from the Minuteman National Historical Park, if it would be all right if we change the order of the agenda so that Simone could present first. Is there any objection to that?
It's a great idea.
No? Simone, are you ready to, would that be okay with you? There you are.
Sure, that's completely fine, Melissa. Good evening, everybody.
Well, I just figured we have a lot of chatter in between now and where you would normally start, and I think it's just only fair as a courtesy to you.
Yes, no, absolutely. I'm happy to shift around whatever is easiest for the board.
Well, I think, in the interest of that, I would like to just switch to then the Minuteman National Park. Some of you may be aware, some of you have attended the Historic Issues Coffee, where Simone gave a brief presentation about the funding that she has received through the federal government to do a lot of work at Minuteman. So I asked, in the interim, the Historic Commission received a letter from her. It's a little complicated because we received this during the time that Heather was leaving and Ann was coming on board. Initially received something last year when Stephen Crane, the former town manager, was here. So unfortunately, things got a little lost in transition. So you received this package in your current meeting materials. It was a lot of information for you. I apologize to you, but I got it at the same time. We all are trying to catch up to speed. And my understanding is, and Simone, you please tell us, that there is a period of time for us to respond to these proposed improvements. And that time period is now running and it ends sometime in late July. Is that right?
Yes, correct. So, so this is one of several different pieces of our Great American Outdoors Act project. So what we have done through the programmatic agreement that we outlined and signed with the Massachusetts State Historic Preservation Office late last year is identified the framework with how we would be sharing these materials with both the Massachusetts SHPO as well as with our consulting parties, and the town of Concord is one of our identified consulting parties. So in March, we had shared with the town the package tied to the buildings and structures piece. So that piece is about to go out for a contract. So and that particular phase of project work is actually going to be split between contractor work and our in-house preservation crews. So that will be addressing several buildings to rehabilitate them, to get them back up to a good condition. If you've walked along any of our trails, you can see that we do need a little TLC for some of our buildings, especially on the exterior. So that is all rehabilitation in terms of the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. That is not new infrastructure. We are just rehabilitating those buildings. So the package that you have this evening is for another phase of that Great American Outdoors Act project. And this is for our landscapes and our trails. So in particular, you'll see there's two packages that came with the letter that we had submitted. One is focused on the trails specifically, and then one is focused on the landscape specifically. So I do want to stress that these are schematic designs. So these are very early in our design aspect. So they're a little bit rougher than we would typically bring forward to a commission review. So what we are hoping during this 30-day review is if there is anything that you're seeing in these drawings that are raising concerns specifically from your perspective, that you share that with us. So for this particular package, we are going to prepare to submit this for contracting through a design bid approach. So the schematic designs would be then shared with our contractor, who would then take it to the next design level for implementation and construction. So again, so these are very early drawings, and the hope is that we would get some initial input from the town of Concord. So that way we can wrap that in with our own internal Park Service comments. So we're essentially reviewing them parallel with you. So we've already submitted our comments to HACE, which is our internal group that developed these initial schematic designs. We'll also send these drawings to the Massachusetts State Historic Preservation Office, as well as our tribal partners who are also part of the consulting parties group.
Okay, so this is, we would still have another opportunity to review this. Is that what you're saying, that?
Yes, so if there are things within this particular package for either the landscape or the trails that you would want to see again, we would obviously encourage you to inform us of that. I think you'll see as you're reviewing them that it is primarily maintenance. So it's not necessarily, again, new infrastructure, but I do want to flag some things of particular interest where I do think there might be some interest of the commission to take a little bit of a deeper dive in. So one in particular is the treatment around the North Bridge. Yep. Hard to think about now because we have been so dry, but we do have some issues as it relates to getting water away from the trail. So you'll see in your packet, so it would be the packet that says repair sections of the 5.5 mile Battle Road Trail. So it is sheet, specifically sheet AB, or sheet number 5. And it says the North Bridge option A. So we would be particularly interested if the commission has any initial thoughts or concerns about the proposed option here to try to address some of those issues on the trail. You'll notice also that we're proposing some new tree plantings to fill the alley back out. Yep. Which I think would be a huge benefit as we look ahead to the 250th. So I did want to flag that in particular for the commission to take a look at, because again, I know the package is pretty large for both the landscape and the trails, but that is a particular area that we would be very interested to hear if there's any concerns from the commission for this first review.
So Nancy, Nancy.
Simone, have you guys gone to the select board on the North Bridge aspect of the trail improvements?
So I am proposed to present to the select board on their August 9th meeting tentatively. So I actually just reached out to Matt to confirm that I will be on their agenda.
Gotcha. Oh, good, good. Oh, good.
Yeah. So, and my presentation to the select board will be more broad as well to cover all aspects of the phase. The phases for the project.
That's great.
Yeah, I just would like to point out to members of the Historical Commission, if you're not aware that the area around the North Bridge, and I don't know how far, is still town land. Am I correct in that? So this is of particular importance to the town. You know, the federal government owns a lot of the land of the Minuteman National Historical Park, but that particular area is town owned. So, you know, it behooves us to pay attention to what they're doing, but I I mean, as far as I can see, your improvements are excellent. I mean, has been the issue of erosion around the different monuments. I used to walk there every single day because I lived near it for 30 years. And I saw it greatly improved. When Nancy was superintendent, there was a major improvement, but it's been now quite a number of years since then. So I know it needs help, and more plantings in the LA, certainly. I mean, if you look at historic postcards, it's really kind of magnificent.
And
You know, well, anyway, so I just,
there were all the curio shops.
yes, but it is such a beautiful and important part of the park and this town.
Yes, and to your point, Melissa, the early 1960s agreement between the National Park Service and the town of Concord sort of solidified that very unique relationship that we have with the town. So, which is why I did want to highlight in particular the work here at the North Bridge and the alley. Whereas the other work, yes, obviously, I'm sure the commission would be very interested in reviewing, but this particular area, I do want to make sure that we do hear from you in this first initial review, if there are any concerns or things that we should be sort of keeping tabs on as we go into the next round of design.
Okay, so are there other comments from anyone else? Usually something like this, I would probably, if there are no comments, maybe work with Anne and maybe a member of the commission to more in-depth review this and send a letter back on behalf of the commission. Because I know we owe you a response, a written response.
Yes, we would appreciate that. So I know that there has been a transition in the planning office. So I appreciate the commission's willingness to work within our timeline. You know, our goal date, of course, is the 250th in 2025. So we are moving very aggressively with our schedule to get things lined up for contracting. We had the delay with the release of the money because it was tied to the FY22 budget. So it has tightened our schedule more so than we would have comfortably have liked.
Alan, yes.
So everything being equal and everyone said full steam ahead, when do you expect this project to start?
So the project is going to be essentially in waves. So as I mentioned, the first package, which was the buildings and structures, we have our pre-bid conferences next week. The goal is to have that in contracting in terms of executed contract by the end of our fiscal year, which would be September 30th. That is a very aggressive schedule, but we do have expectations from Congress, which is pushing us forward. For the landscape and trails, our goal would be to get that under contract before the end of the fall. So probably past our fiscal year, but in the early first quarter, of FY23. And then there'll be additional phases. So we also are doing new signage for the park. As I'm sure you've seen as you're driving around, some of our signage is a little dated and looking a little rough. So there'll be a secondary package for signage. We expect that to be a little bit later because there's the design element and then fabrication before we get to installation. The bulk of the signs, the goal is to get that in by the anniversary. There'll be some secondary signage that would probably come in after the anniversary. And then the last portion of work is focused on our monuments and conservation for those monuments. That you will see closer to the anniversary, and we would be doing that in-house with our conservators.
So pretty aggressive, good.
Yes, so it will be very busy in the park for the next 3 years. But again, we want to balance that with maintaining access for visitors. So we will be trying to do things in sort of sequencing for phases. So that way we won't have large areas of the park closed off. But with the trail work, there'll be some interruptions, but we haven't gotten to the point where we've fleshed out, potential reroutes, temporary ways to get visitors through from one end to the other.
So I have a kind of I noticed on, and I'm not really good at reading these plans, to be honest, but notice of residential use. So right now the properties are the properties that the park controls, where people are not living, there's still, I think, a few people who are, living out their life tenancy. What is the use, what is going to be the use for these? Because it's my understanding, that we don't have housing there anymore. There's no seasonal housing. But, I see that residential. So what does that mean?
Sure. So we do have seasonal housing within the park. So there's a couple of different houses that currently support our seasonal staff. So that's the Noah Brooks Tavern, as well as Farwell Jones House. We also have permanent employees that are residing in some of our historic structures. For example, the Elisha Jones House
Okay.
has a full-time resident in it. And then in addition,
That's
we
you.
have, yeah,
Right?
yes, yes.
So this isn't new. Okay. I guess I didn't realize that there were seasonal folks in Noah Brooks. So it's not a new use of the houses, of the structures.
Correct. So there are several of the structures that have been empty for quite some time in terms of use. So for example, the Sam Brooks House has been empty for some time. So part of the purpose of the rehabilitation project is not only to bring these structures back up to good condition, but also allow us to be able to essentially get them back in use. A used building in terms of an occupied building is better for the building in the long run. It allows us to be able to better keep an eye if there are any issues that are coming in the house. The investment is really to allow us to bring those structures back to a functioning use. So there will be a combination. Some of the buildings that are being rehabilitated are for interpretation. So for example, the Captain Smith House, so that will continue to be used for interpretation. Obviously the Miriam House. All of these different structures will have some element of work to them, some more extensive than others due to their condition. So for example, the Stowe House at the interior, it needs a significant amount of work to bring it back up to a livable condition. But others, the work will be primarily some repairs to like exterior siding, repainting kind of across the board. As you probably seen, some of our houses are in need of a repaint. So again, the work is focusing through the Secretary of Interior standards on rehabilitation. We are not doing any new capital improvements. That's not the goal of the Great American Outdoors Act. It really is to address backlog maintenance.
Okay. Nancy, yeah.
Simone, I'm really sorry we missed the boat on understanding what the changes to the structures will be, because there's also a change in use. And I'm concerned about or wondering about how much flexibility you might have to reevaluate what already had been coming down the pike in terms of the use of the most prominent and historically important structures in the park, like the Sam Brooks House, which was used for events and whatnot, as well as Joshua Brooks, the John Nelson House, which not Concord, was contemplated to be an interpretive structure. So I'm wondering what discretion you might have to reevaluate some of those early decisions that might refocus the uses on public access and benefit, because creating the park has been a challenge. And I know you've got all this money, but I don't see, or I don't know about any major operating increases. So I know what you're struggling against, but I worry about creating a residential leasing community or a park occupancy of houses that I know people in Concord who were displaced will notice this and might ultimately create issues for the park. So could you address your flexibility there?
Sure. So the park previously under the last superintendent went through a strategic facility investment plan. So as part of that plan, it reviewed the different assets that the park currently has under management and identified strategies to both bring those structures up to good condition, as well as to look at the use of those particular buildings and to create a strategy where we would be able to produce some income to help support the management, i.e. the maintenance of several of these structures. So through that process that the park had undertaken at that time, a leasing strategy was identified, and that was used as part of the justification to receive the money from the Great American Outdoors Act. So in regards to the leasing strategy, that is tied hand in hand with the funding for the rehabilitation, and those decisions have already been made at this point prior to my arrival. So the flexibility to the extent that perhaps Nancy, you're referring to is not quite available at this particular juncture. And also, to be honest, our staffing levels makes it very difficult for us to have more of our historic houses open on a more regular basis for interpretive programs. We do put a lot of emphasis on Hartwell Tavern, especially during our high season. We are looking to grow our volunteer corps to help us in order to open up some additional houses, such as the Barrett House, and also some of the other locations like the Miriam House on a more robust schedule. We are hoping to get there maybe next season. We have not been able to do it this season. In addition, we are looking to try to get some additional volunteer support and possibly partner with the town of Concord for the Wayside as well. So we do have some Great American Outdoors Act efforts that are going to be put towards the Wayside. So it'll be closed more consistently for a little bit longer, but we are doing some special programming there to reactivate that site as well.
Yeah, several houses, I guess, I'm remembering in Concord, the historic houses are closed from like after Thanksgiving or Christmas through March. So
Yes.
those are closed
Yeah,
down regularly. So you're saying even for a witness house, which is Sam Brooks, and so prominent, that that's going to be park housing.
So in particular, Sam Brooks, we are looking to potentially move it into the park housing program to return it back to a residential use. So there are also some of the other houses, for example, the house associated with the Inferrara Farm.
Yeah.
So that is part of our Great American Outdoors Act strategy. So that house would be rehabilitated and that would be moved into a leasing program to reactivate that residential use there.
Yeah, and so you can hear I'm concerned about the historic structures that were associated with the reason that the park was created and the expectations of the American people to see those resources be more available to the public. And this might create a very long-term residential focus of the park. And that's just, I was hoping you would have some flexibility there. Thank you.
Sure, and I appreciate the question, Nancy. I think obviously more broadly, the park would love to have the ability to have all of our structures open to the public with the staffing that could support a much more robust interpretive program across the board. But unfortunately, we're not in that particular position. And the opportunity to bring these very important structures back to good condition was a big plus for us. An investment of over $27 million is a pretty big deal for a park of this size.
It's unbelievable, actually. You are rehabilitating several of the less important structures in the park. I'm assuming there was an income benefit analysis done. How much money do you expect to get from the less historic structures versus the more primary? How is that going to change your staffing ability? And could you focus mostly on the less historic structures, but you're saying you don't really have flexibility there?
So in particular for the residential leasing program, so we've identified the East Quarter Schoolhouse, which is next to Miriam's Corner. We've identified the Joshua Brooks House. We've identified the Ferrara House. And I'm missing one more. Hold on, excuse me. Go to my list.
Where'd you go? East Quarter, Joshua Brooks,
And the
Ferrara.
Ferrara.
And the Ferrara House, correct. Oh, and the Stowe House, correct. And then the George Hall House, which is right there on the corner of Manual Drive.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Yes.
five.
Well, that's why the new septic, right?
And then
Correct.
those are all quite historic, even the Ferrara House and the
Yes.
Quarter Schoolhouse. But then there's no other like 70s or, those are mostly in Lincoln, maybe.
Correct. They're not in Concord, correct.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I share with Nancy, I mean, I only worked for the park for 5 years, but in that 5 years was the years that we fought Massport to protect the park from Massport expansion. And in the course of all that, we did a lot of research into the history of the park and the families that were, they would say displaced. I mean, it was fair market value, but this just feels so, it's not you. I mean, I realize you inherited this project, but will there be strong rules and regulations about how they can live in these houses and what can be seen outside? I mean, to me, if you're driving down the Meadow Road and you see Sam Brooks and a swing set in the backyard, that's not appropriate. You see what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. So
Well,
I
there are
think-
still families alive around town who are still will be angry about this, I think, when they realize, but you know that.
So I think one of the things to remember is that, most of our structures, I shouldn't say most, but there's a significant number of our structures that currently are empty, and due to the lack of funding available to maintain them, are not at this condition that they truly should be, based on the importance and the significance of those particular structures. So the way our leasing program is structured, similar to other requirements for anyone who is leasing sort of outside the park, we have stipulations, we have frameworks that are put into place to protect the investment, which is our particular historic buildings. In addition, we have tied to that, in terms of broad maintenance needs, those are things that actually come to the park. So currently we have one of our houses leased, the Nelson House. So the way our leases are structured is that, if there are major things that need to be done to the house, those are done by the National Park Service. So that way they meet our preservation standards. So a little bit different than maybe leasing frameworks for properties outside of the national park. We have our standards that have to meet our requirements. In addition, we have our compliance requirements through Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. So all of that still comes into play,
Okay.
even if we have individuals living in those buildings that are not park staff. So, that's as important to us as it is to the community. We want to make sure that as people are walking through the park, that yes, it might be a residential building in terms of you aren't going to be walking through the building, but you're going to be walking through the front as you are following the trail. So, the fences are not going to be, formal fences and fence lines are not going to be put in. The ability to see the landscape clearly and the facade of the house from the trail is not going to change just because somebody is living in it.
Okay. I mean, thank you. I mean, I appreciate the constraints you have, and I appreciate the money that you need. So do understand. It's just, in the best of all possible worlds, you have the staff and you could have interpretive programs in all of those houses. But I know that's not real. So I'm sorry, are there other questions? Alan, Jesse, Nancy, some more, Rebecca? No, well, thank you. Thank you very much. So I know this is a lot of stuff for all of us to digest. Some of us digest it more easily than others.
I have one question.
Oh, yep.
Simone, is there any way to get the information about what's going to be done to the historic houses? Maybe not the whole package, or maybe it comes as a package. but
Sure, the package was submitted to the town,
I
so
know, but
I
it-
am more than happy to,
Is
would
there
you prefer hard copies or digital?
electronic, I think.
Okay, okay,
don't-
yes.
I don't
So,
exactly know what happened
so
there.
if that could be sent to Anne, and then Anne could make it
Okay.
available to everybody, that would.
Sure.
Thank you very, very much. So if there are no other questions, then Anne and I will work with her and members of the commission will get responses, but I mean, from my point of view, I mean, what you're proposing to improve on the landscape seems perfectly appropriate. I mean,
Except for the paving, little concerned about new parking lots. But I think maybe they could be hidden better. But there'll be another shot, right?
Yes, but please, but Nancy, I mean, that's a perfect example. If that's something that the commission is concerned about in terms of that identification in the plans, please include that in the letter
Okay.
back from the town,
Okay.
because that'll be important for us to have that on the record for this first grouping.
Oh, okay. And it seems to line up with some of the comments of the internal commenters. In
Yes.
terms of the 4-step, or I'm a little rusty on all that, but it seems to line up. Okay.
Yes, and as I said, we, due to the timeline, we're running kind of parallel. So, the park internally had our comments ourselves, which are not reflected in the set of drawings that were provided to you and the other consulting parties.
Any public meetings on any of this? Probably not at this point.
No, we're not going to have specific for this particular package. Like I said, I'm scheduled to be presenting at the next select board meeting, which will be in August. And we are also developing our comms plan. So my hope is to actually set some pop-ups out on the trail and just talk to visitors as they're going by to point out some of the different project elements that are going to be happening. So folks aren't surprised.
I think that would be good because it is a massive project and an unbelievable opportunity, but it is
Yes.
going to be huge, huge, huge change in the landscape.
And, and it's going to be over the next couple of years too.
Yeah.
So folks are going to continuously see action happening in the park, and we want to
Yeah.
make sure the public is
Yeah.
informed.
Yeah.
What towns, it includes Concord, Lincoln, what other towns?
Lexington. So so there's project work in all 3 of those towns within our boundaries.
Okay.
Thank you.
No other questions. Thank you very, very much, Simone. We very much appreciate your doing this on pretty short notice. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate also being moved up in the agenda. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So,
Lucky you.
okay. So then we can move back to our original agenda, item 1, which would be to elect a new associate member and a clerk. And I just want to let you know that I checked with the town clerk's office of Concord, and we can elect associate members. There is a law within the state that supersedes what the town does. So we can do that this evening. But the other thing I just would like to say that just about when COVID hit, we were working on drafting amendments to our administrative code to clarify, among other things, an associate member's position and exactly what that position would be allowed to do. Say, for example, if we didn't have a quorum, but we had an associate member, could that person participate as a full member and vote so that we would have a quorum? So those are, I don't have that for tonight, but I think at our next meeting, I will send that to Anne so that we can distribute the amendments that we had proposed over the last couple of years to discuss, and then we can forward that to the select board for their adoption. So given that, the 3 candidates that we had discussed, and I had sent around the resumes after the last June meeting, are Ryan Hanley, the professor, Nancy Frizzelli, who's a professional historian, and Sophia Ganem. I've heard several times from Ryan, and I know Nancy is still interested. I'm not as sure about Sophia, but I would like to open it to you folks if someone would like to nominate someone and for a vote, or if you have some more discussion. So I open it to you folks. Would anyone wish to nominate one of these three folks as an associate member?
Can I say something?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
yes, please. I'm
No,
waiting.
I went through, I went through the resumes again. And I thought, based on what I know, my experience, I tend to, Mr. Hanley is the person that I'd be leaning towards. I was impressed with his credentials and his the ease of which he's going to slip into the town and slip into this committee. So having said that, I would like to nominate him as I don't know if the wording is correct, but a new member or
Associate member.
associate member. So,
Is there a second for Mr. Hanley? Jesse, Rebecca, and Nancy?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Oh, thank you.
I don't think I can, otherwise I would.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is just such a, so are there any other nominations? Nancy, you're muted, I think. You're muted.
I know. Thank you. I would just like to say that we were so lucky to have at least two, maybe three, really well qualified and potential members of the Historical Commission who I hope we will keep in our sights going forward, because I think I know Nancy Frisella Lee personally, and I know she would make a great contribution to the commission. She's a great researcher and has a lot of background. She helped a lot on the scenic roads
Absolutely.
documentation, for instance, and she's a real powerhouse. So I think we should be grateful that we're having a dilemma where we are getting such qualified applicants. And I think that's because, Melissa, what you and the rest of the commission is dedicating themselves to, and I'm glad to see the commission really stepping up and stepping forward.
Well,
So that's all I have to say.
okay. Well, thank you. I would also point out, so I'm glad we have three because two of us are going to go off in a year. So, it's important to have people in the pipeline. So
There is that.
that's important. So if there are no other nominations, then I would like to take a vote. I think we need a formal nomination. Well, you have formally
We
nominated.
have a formal
It
motion.
is formally nominated. I'm so used to, and you're very quiet. Heather used to help me phrase things in meetings. So I will just assume that was a formal nomination. So all in favor of Ryan Hanley as our new associate member of the Historical Commission, please state your name and say aye. Alan,
Alan Bogosian, aye.
Nancy
Aye.
Nelson. You're supposed to say your name.
Nancy.
That's the Zoom rules. Rebecca?
Rebecca Lemetry, aye.
Okay, Melissa Sawfield, I would say aye. And Jesse, I guess you still can't vote yet, but we'll figure that one out.
Okay.
So thank you. So we have nominated and voted Ryan as the new associate member of the Historical Commission, and I will notify him. Then I guess we're supposed to elect a clerk. I don't really know what the clerk does. Anne, do you know?
I don't.
I don't. Okay. Well,
So I'm actually not sure, because I think that my position is sort of the person who takes the minutes, which is traditionally what a clerk does.
yeah.
So,
So I guess maybe, because we all review the minutes at the next meeting. I mean, everyone, this is something I believe Elizabeth told me I needed to do. I could ignore it, but I don't think I should do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I could check with her and you could go over it next meeting.
How's that? Yes, let's do that. We will defer that one.
I bet the clerk does not take minutes. It's a little bit of a ghost position on another committee I serve on. And so it might be a little funny all around.
Yeah, okay. Well, then let's just defer that one. So let's move on to the next. So this is to review the draft rules and regulations for the scenic roads bylaw. As you know, Elizabeth, several weeks ago sent a memo to all of us about specific areas of the draft rules and regulations that needed additional definition. Actually, I came up with some, but I'm not so sure you all got that. So I'm not, I believe we're supposed to have a joint meeting, and maybe you know about this, with the planning board next month. Is that right?
August 9th, maybe?
That would be a Monday.
I don't know. I have it here somewhere.
I hadn't
Yeah,
heard
you're right. You're right. It is August 9th. Yes.
I haven't heard that. I apologize. I'm so new and I'm
Oh,
learning
no.
Zoom and
Don't worry about it.
learning the
It's-
ropes. So
According to Elizabeth, it's August 9th.
Yeah, it is August 9th. I see that. So, so appreciate any written comments by August 4th. So, this one is, to me, this is a hard one. You know, there were some, among the things we're supposed to define the right-of-way maintenance. What does that mean? You know, there's, in discussions I've had offline with some of you, the idea of, you know, proper pruning of trees, remove the vegetation from the area, manage the invasive plants that grow up along the walkway and, the side route right away, side of the road. Also, possibly look into training the folks who do this work to understand what's invasive, what's a proper pruning of a tree. I think any of you who've lived, like I have on Lowell Road, where the light plant just comes and shears off the tree, just so that they can get the power lines, you know, free of vegetation, is not the proper way to, you know, address a tree.
So I would just like to add to that. I think it's an area for future cooperation between DPW and the Historical Commission, proper maintenance of Concord's historic and scenic roads. Because they have, not only does the light plant have that issue, but recently there has been right-of-way clearing along the roadsides. Go look at Lowell Road and look along Lexington Road. They have a machine that can go flat. I think it's a brush hog. Alan may know this, a brush hog, but it can turn to be horizontal, and it just goes down and it cuts down whatever's in the way and just shreds trees and shrubs.
In its path, anything in its path.
Anything in its path.
Wow.
It's just a brutal method of maintaining these beautiful roads. And in the meantime, the roads become overgrown with all kinds of invasives and other stuff.
But I don't know if we're able to put anything on paper
Probably
or
not.
any guidance, because they have easement. The
Yeah.
power company has an easement.
Well, but part of the scenic roads bylaw does acknowledge that it doesn't apply to their routine maintenance, but we are being asked to ask, what is right-of-way maintenance? You know, that's part of our responsibility in developing these rules and regulations. So I think we do need to put something on paper.
And we should make it a heavy hitter on paper. We should make
But-
very
but
strict
Alan-
guidelines.
You're talking about utilities, right? I'm talking about mostly DPW's.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's
Right.
the bylaw says that it excludes that, but what we are being asked still is to define what right-of-way maintenance is. They're part of right-of-way maintenance.
So they have a very strong policy on maintaining historic and scenic roads. I forget what the title of their policy is, but we could add something that says, with reference to the DPW's own standard, for the maintenance of historic and scenic
Well,
roads.
is it different in the Parks Department, Nancy? On the scenic roads in the,
I think it's DPW in general. I attend the DPW commission meetings, and they were opposed to the scenic bylaw that was just passed by town meeting because they felt, particularly one or two members felt that their current policy, as we know, is several tiers down from law and regulation, but they feel that they have a very strong scenic roads policy. I think that's what it's called, scenic roads policy or something like that. And if they followed that policy in defining what roadside maintenance, routine maintenance was, I think that would be excellent. And it might help them to abandon that machine that tears up and really doesn't get to the real important maintenance of the stone walls and the roadsides in town.
Is there language in the policy that we could use for this? I mean, I think incorporating it by reference is a fantastic idea, but I'm
Yeah.
just wondering whether we could also pair it for the definition.
I bet that's true. And I just have to dig it out of this pile that I have. about
So,
scenic roads.
Nancy, I hope this is fair. If you could do that and send it to every member of the commission, and I will send to every member of the commission the stuff that I've been working on so that everybody sees it, and Anne, obviously CC Anne. Because we're, they have specifically asked us to come up with language to help them.
Yeah, I think we should tie that language right back to their policy.
Yeah, oh yeah,
So that would be fun. I'll do that.
okay. And just to reply to all, I mean, the other thing, we were asked to define what is historical character and values. So I kind of struggled with that, but I went back to what we said in presenting the scenic roads bylaw to the town, that in our town of Concord's case, it has to appear on the Walling map of 1852. It has to exist built features such as historic buildings, structures and sites, historic monuments, burial grounds, agricultural buildings and fields, among those things. So, I don't know what more they are looking for to define what historical character and value is. So again, I'll say, I'll send out what I've come up with. The other thing, we're supposed to define scenic and aesthetic characteristics. They include canopy trees, agricultural fields, stone walls, historic homes or monuments, historic vistas, vegetation which contributes to scenic beauty. Non-invasives. No, simple two-lane core transportation routes. I mean, what is a simple scenic road? I'd say unimpeded with modern traffic devices such as blinking traffic lights, raised crosswalks, multiple travel lanes. I mean, I'm just trying to come up with a definition. I'm not entirely sure what they expect of us, but those are my ideas. And then the other thing, they did ask us to comment on tree enforcement, replacement enforcement. So some towns actually have a fine. This would be something, as you know, the way it is written now, if it involves a tree, it's a joint meeting with the planning board and the tree warden. So I think already in the definition, they do describe the size of the tree. I think it's at 4 feet, it's a 6-inch diameter. So they would, or replacing it in kind. So these are things that we are being asked to comment on. And
Are they talking at the same time to DPW? Because they're going to have some opinions on this.
Well, yes. I mean, the idea is that this was going to come back to the Historical Commission, the DPW, and other stakeholders. I'm not so sure who those were. Elizabeth and Ann may know, and then the planning board. Those are particularly those 3 committees are the most important. And that was presented at town meeting. I mean, that's among the things I said, that if it gets passed, these are the 3 entities that have to come up with proper language.
Right, for the regulations.
Yeah.
Is it possible to include both option 1 and option 2 and make the penalty at the discretion of the tree warden or the DPW? I would imagine there might be some circumstances where
Maybe the historical.
maybe they would just want the fine and not feel like there's a need to replace the tree because of everything else that exists. And maybe in other instances, they would feel like replacing was critical. I don't know.
I don't know, so that's fine, so it either you replace, the homeowner, whoever did it, replace the tree.
One of the most predominant images of New England along New England roads all throughout New England are the sugar maple trees that were planted along the roadsides by the village improvement societies. And that is so typical and characteristic. So it would be a shame to lose that link to past efforts to make
What
their
is-
villages beautiful.
What are you suggesting, that we tell them they have to replace it with a sugar maple?
No. I'm just saying, for example, this is that image of New England roads is very powerful. It's used in all kinds of travel, this, that, and the other stuff. And it's a very iconic image, actually. So that's an example. I don't think every tree needs to be a sugar maple, but it cannot be a Norway maple, which is a highly vilified species that was.
Yes, Nancy, you should talk to Brian Donahue about that.
Yeah, well, we agree.
But Nancy,
I know,
are you
I'll tell you.
Are you suggesting?
I'm sorry.
Specifying that the replacement, are you suggesting that we specify that they specify that the replacement be of the same type of tree, or specifying that the tree warden or DPW has the power to make them replace the tree with the same type of tree? I think that's a great idea.
I would rather have it be in the regulations and give more, sometimes boards are more or less strong in their consideration of requests from developers or residents or whatever. From my point of view, it would be good if we could say replacement in kind, a native tree typical of historical tree plantings. I don't know, something. There's a document that somebody in the National Park Service developed about treatment of historic roads that might be helpful. That's a little bit of a research project still for me,
Yeah.
but there's definitions and ideas in there. But for a native tree that's proven to survive along the road, sugar maples have trouble along roads. So it has to be probably not one of your more highly trafficked roads, but these rural roads or historic roads are sometimes less trafficked. So
I have a
there's
question.
some judgment, but some latitude there, but maybe we could specify native trees of the appropriate ultimate size and effect or something like that.
Because if it was in kind, I mean, it could be a Norway maple, because they sort of.
No, that's an
So
invasive.
I'm asking,
Oh.
so we wouldn't necessarily want to say in kind, because in kind might be,
A Norway maple.
and yeah,
No, that won't do.
okay.
And I bet some of those old trees are not probably Norways. Well, maybe they could be that big though. They grow like weeds.
Okay, so
I'll look into that some more too.
I will send to you the stuff I've been working on, and please read and comment, and then just because the August 9th meeting, I think we wouldn't all have to participate, although we're all invited to participate. Our meeting would be later. I think the 9th must be on Monday, right? Because if Simone's presenting at the
Select
select
board.
board, that's a Monday.
Oh, that's a busy day.
At any rate, we'll send you notices about this, but in the meantime, I will send to you what I've come up with. And please, read and comment and add.
Isn't that posted already on our meeting docs?
What, then? August 9th?
What you put together?
Well, I couldn't find it, but
Oh, I got it somehow.
I'm,
Okay.
well, anyway,
never
I'll
mind.
send it again, but
Yeah,
I'm
never
now
mind.
going to add some more based on what we've talked about tonight. I will add more.
Okay.
So, okay,
Can I ask a miscellaneous question or a miscellaneous comment?
of course.
They specify gatehouse media under the legal notice section. And I think we're all hoping that there will be another newspaper available for legal notices soon. So I was
Oh, right.
wondering whether we should propose striking gatehouse media from,
Eventually, but they're still paper of record.
Well, you could say, or another outlet with, that can publish notices. I think there's some requirements for publishing legal notices.
yeah, just
Yeah.
include language that would open the possibility of
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
So-
another competent or whatever,
authorized, yeah.
authorized. Thank you. Thank you.
okay. Authorized, yeah, what am I? Authorized.
Outlet. Another authorized outlet. Because that's also an important source of income for the new local paper.
Yes. Okay, so we'll work on that. And so moving along, Historic Resources Master Plan, just an update on that. Chessie and I and Ann had a very long meeting this morning with Nate Smith, who is the town archivist, and Anka Voss, who, as you know, is the curator of special collections for the town. And it was an excellent meeting. Chessie, how about, would you like to describe what we discussed? It was a
Oh
whole lot.
dear. I think, yeah, it was very helpful to hear everyone's perspective. It was our first meeting with Nate, who had a lot of great insights. I missed the last discussion, so I'm sorry if I'm being repetitive, but I think we got more clarity on the scope, which has been the elusive piece of this. We came up with a lot of ideas of what would go into phase one, which we're viewing as the narratives and content piece. And then Nate helped us think through the possibilities of phase two. I don't know how many phases there will be, but just generally speaking, which would be the creation of sort of an interactive, dynamic report webpage online. The idea being that we would ultimately end up with a website like the Envision Concord website, which is hosted privately, but available. We would link to it from the Historical Commission's website. And it would just have, it would have the narrative piece and all of the survey piece, and then a lot of other really exciting pieces, which Melissa helped me hear about kind of compiling all of the resources that residents, homeowners, researchers can use to conduct their own research into individual properties, having it be both a tutorial and a gathering place of links and resources and instructions. What else?
Well,
And then,
it would link us to a lot of the documentation that already exists.
yes.
Including at the local, municipal, state, and federal Library of Congress, stuff that I didn't even realize we had. I mean,
Yeah.
and what Anne has offered to do is to put write this up, at least start writing up the scope of work, which is, as Chessie says, it's been our biggest challenge. I mean, the whole thing will be, you know, the idea is that it's hosted, it's digital, it's hosted on a website that would be, who manages it is still to be determined, but likely probably Nate, because this is really a Town of Concord project, but it is a joint undertaking with the Town of Concord, that is Nate Smith and the Historical Commission and the library, because the library has so many of the resources already, the Macris forms and a huge amount of photography that if we ultimately are allowed to access. Nate also has a fair amount, and I will send to you, I don't know, Chelsea, did he send to you and Ann? He sent the link of the town archives.
Mhm.
Which, I just looked at a little bit today, included amazing video footage of like in 1925, the 150th anniversary of the April 19th celebration. And it's great stuff. And he's really just beginning to upload and catalog and then digitize town records because he's only been on the job for 3 years. So the idea of this new, what we're calling like a portal to Concord's historic resources is really, I mean, it's really very exciting. And we intend to submit a grant proposal, and it may be just phase 1 of 3 phases or something like that to start with the CPC. And this may be something that could qualify for a matching grant from the Mass Historical to help pay.
That would be so great.
Yeah, so
Is Diane Proctor dialed into all this?
I have mentioned it to her. I haven't talked to her since today's meeting, but today was really kind of mind blowing about all the resources that we could harness through this and make available to just, the homeowner or the professional scholar. I mean, it would centralize and make accessible all that is kind of all over the place right now.
Yeah, she would be very excited by this.
Yeah. So
I'll talk to her about it.
And I
too.
thought an interesting point that I think Nate made, maybe Anka and Nate made it jointly, is that the end product that we were envisioning today would be a very helpful resource for town employees like Nate or library employees like Anka, because they get so many requests. And if this existed, they could refer people. So it actually it would open up town resources too, ultimately, which I thought was a really interesting aspect and hopefully will be part of the pitch to the CPC.
That's great.
yeah. Anyway,
Something like this years ago, so it might, maybe I could talk with them and see what they did. I'll check that out.
okay. So Ann, do you have anything more to add? Because you've taken on the first big brunt of this.
Right. It was interesting to sort of talk to you all and sort of figure out, what it is not, that sort of process of elimination. So it seems as if it's really not a plan, and it's not really adding to the survey.
Right.
And it's not a digitization project. I thought it would be one of the 3, but it's actually, in my mind anyway, and I hope I'm understanding it correctly. I'm just coming into this. It's really an educational, like a website, as you were describing, and the portal to historic resources in Concord.
We should be very careful how the project is described because of the language in this Community Preservation Act and what things are historic preservation. And typically modern things like digitization are not necessarily considered under historic preservation unless the Historical Commission, this gives us some power, makes a direct finding that what's being proposed is appropriate and
Well,
under that category.
there is some digitization because Nate mentioned that he has some documents from the town that if he doesn't digitize them, they will disintegrate. And I don't know, maybe it was Anka, because the whole Lost Concord, that is another whole chapter. There's the former chair of the commission has been working on this for years to try and identify the Lost Concord piece. And one thing it brings to my mind is 1075 Lowell Road. It will now become part of Lost Concord. And for those who were interested in Harry Little as an architect or Shercliffe as a landscape designer, it is an important site. So anyway, that would be another thing that's in there. But the documents that were given to Anka, if they aren't digitized, they won't exist because they're disintegrated.
That's fine. It's just a matter of looking at the requirements and making sure that the project is described within that framework.
Yeah.
That's
And
all.
I would say, Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but we discussed adding resources that haven't been documented, from Canantum to archaeological things, revising the narrative to be both more comprehensive, but also more inclusive, adding a history of the preservation in Concord. And then, maybe we don't do totally new surveys, but taking into account the fact that some surveys are 40 years old, and seeing, have we learned anything else since then? Has there been any, the Lost Concord piece, incorporating that? So I think there is maybe not additional survey work, but there is definitely additional preservation work, I would say.
Well, first, part of preservation is identification, right?
Yeah.
So is there a concept of finding the untold stories and resources, the things that relate to Concord's history of slavery? Lincoln has been
Absolutely,
doing
because
huge
if you,
things. So there's room for those new.
that's part of the rewrite of the history, because, if you read what's in the Historic Resources Master Plan right now, it has no mention of, well,
Yeah.
there might be a mention of Jenny Dugan Road and the family of Thomas Dugan, but
And Squaw Sachem,
there's nothing about that. So,
but
there's a
Squaw
huge
Sachem is
amount of,
probably not the right term anymore.
well,
we
we
were
talked
talking
about
about that
that.
today.
Yeah. Park Service, Department of Interior is getting rid of all that stuff.
Yeah, so that's a sidelight, but yes, I think we do need to look into that. At
Because
any rate,
that's fascinating.
it's a very big project, and it could keep somebody in employment for a while. So that was all. We just wanted to give you an update about that, which is pretty exciting. And thank you, Anne, for
Yes, of course.
taking that on. Ugh,
I think
Because
this is
you
why
did-
I'm here. I'm more of a curator and architectural historian and educator than I am really a regulatory historic preservation type of person. So I'm into the interpretation and education, and this is going to be terrific. So
Well, that's perfect for
Including-
us, because you also bring to it a very different mindset than, I think, I personally get sort of stuck in my view of it, and it is really good to hear you come at it from a different point of view. So thank you. So the next thing, the preservation restrictions that we have on the Thoreau Farm Trust, the West Concord Depot, the Our Lady's Church in West Concord, the Garfield Roadhouse, the Thomas Mott Shaw House, and eventually Wright Tavern. It occurred to me that, one of the obligations of those preservation restrictions is that we visit them once a year. So what I am asking is if each of you would take one property and kind of bring yourself up to speed and maybe introduce yourself to whoever manages it, and then maybe arrange for a visit for the commission, or at least on your own, and then report back. These are serious obligations that we have, and I feel like we haven't really done a good job overseeing them. So if someone would like to volunteer for any one of those, speak up. Otherwise, you're going to get assigned. How's that?
I'll look at the Thoreau Farm Trust.
Okay, Nancy. Alan, would you care to
Oh.
take one?
I'll do whatever, whichever, assign me one. I kind of like the tavern.
That's bold of you.
I know it's a lot. It's a
Yeah,
lot.
because a draft, I want to know the status of the draft preservation restriction, for one thing, that may be stuck in town council's office right now.
Well,
Have
do
you
you
been
want to
following?
be co?
What?
Do you want to do a co? on
Yeah,
that?
sure.
Yeah, Alan and Nancy.
I'll
Well,
just do a mind dump and then I'm done.
Okay.
Nancy, because you're still in the CPC for another year, right?
April,
So next year. So, yeah, so,
less than a year.
in this case, Chessie, I think if you're willing, and Rebecca, you're still here? Where Rebecca, I've lost her. I sort of started on the depot. I guess I'll stay on the depot because I got very frustrated with the MBTA, you know, is actually technically owns it and is obligated to take care of it, and they haven't done a very good job. So I'll take that one back.
And then the church and the Garfield Roadhouse, is that the Shaw?
That's the Thomas Mott Shaw. I'm sorry, I can't remember. It's 315. I can't remember. That is there are now 2 private homes.
Is that the carriage, the one with the carriage house?
Yeah,
Yeah.
remember they split the property?
Because I worked on that carriage house, so I'd like to follow that through.
Oh, then that's yours.
Yeah.
So you can have 2, Alan, but you can co with Nancy. Okay.
And the owner is I think she lives in Brookline, if I'm not.
With somebody, Joyce Lawrence?
Joyce, right, she lives yeah, and I've done work at her place, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, so would you mind? That would be great, Alan. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
And then the church.
And then the church. Chelsea, could you do the
Great.
church? I don't, the church, you know, is now the Concord Youth Theater operates out of it. And I guess they have all of it. I'm not exactly sure about that. If it's the entire church is now turned over. So if you could find out and just, yeah.
I think one of the additions is occupied by town folks.
That's what I thought.
So it might just be the original chapel.
Well, I mean, you can get a copy of the preservation restriction. We all can get copies of that, and then each one, and then just, you know, bone up on it. So we know kind of that they're doing what they're supposed to do. Okay. So amendments.
Oh, I know. And were we totally relieved of any responsibility for the Wheeler Harrington house?
You know, that's something I need to ask Marcia where that stands. I think yes. I think it's supposedly now just the natural resources, and then we get.
It's also facility. It's also facilities has a lot to do with that.
You know, I thought that there was, you know, remember that she was going to do a charrette to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's still in the offing.
Okay, so that's something Marcia has to do before she retires.
Yeah, I think it's on our list, actually.
Okay. Okay. So the demolition delay bylaw. So, you know, we have been pecking away at trying to improve this or strengthen the bylaw, as you know. And my proposal to consider is, you know, we had, you know, before Heather left, she had talked about the idea of partial demolition and defining what that might be. And I feel that that is maybe too big a thing to take on. It's a lot of research and a lot of work. So I'm taking what I think is an easier amendment, and that would be the issue of whether or not the bylaw runs with the owner of the property or the property itself. And I have put this question out to the Massachusetts listserv, which goes to historical commissions and district commissions throughout the state, and have gotten 14 replies back. The majority, by a slim margin, but the majority have changed it to so that the bylaw runs with the owner, so that in the course of the maybe the year delay, if the house is sold, they have to reapply for another permit. So that effectively extends the time frame for the delay. It gives us, the historical commission or other neighborhood or residents or something, an opportunity to talk to the owner about perhaps something other than demolishing the property. What do folks think? I mean, this would have to come before town meeting, would be a warrant article.
Well, all I can tell you is in the building trades, if you perform work on a structure in a certain period of time, and then you move into the next year where there's a new code cycle, then you must adhere to the new code cycle, which is pretty similar to what you're talking about. So if they don't complete it within that time frame, then you go into the next time period. And you have to start all over again.
Start all over again.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So the people who work in the building trades are accustomed to this maybe happening.
Correct. Correct. So if I don't fulfill my obligation within a 3-year time period, in the following year, now I have to start all over again.
So what do others think?
Yeah. I think that's right. I wonder about the climate for another change politically with town meeting, that's all. Is the time right for any more strengthening of the demo delay? That's my only, it's a question, mostly a question, but otherwise I think it's more modest than the other thing you were talking about. And we've got a lot to look at. So I like it.
Well, I mean, we know it could be tabled until next year. I mean, I realize we have a lot that we're working on. I don't,
Yeah, and we could get it started at the least.
I intend to send out another appeal to others who participate in this listserv. Because, you know, there clearly are more than 14 towns in the state that have a demolition delay bylaw. So I'm hoping that I can get more answers.
Yeah.
Okay, Jesse.
Do we have any, I think it's, would be a great change. And I think it comes across as a moderate advancement, the amount of teeth the bylaw has.
No big deal.
Do we have any anecdotal or other evidence of how often this happens, or that's something that a house gets sold maybe during the 1-year period and then they wait the 4 months and knock it down? Or is this something that developers talk about? Oh, I got the 1-year delay, you know, but it's about to run out, I'll sell it to you. And I don't know, how does this work in practice in the real world?
I got one response. I confess I can't remember the whole thing, but I was thinking it was from Brookline, or talking about real estate developers kind of using this in the negative. Well, and that's, I mean, that's why they wanted to change it, so that it ran with the owner. So there was a new owner. So I will reach out to them and find out more about why they did it. I will also reach out to Newton, because remember Lara Kreitzer used to be Ewing, and she was our senior planner, and she's now with Newton, and she did respond to me. So she may have more, because Newton has gone through a lot of change and worked hard on strengthening its bylaw. I know that. So I will, it's good. I should, I need to get more.
She's also, I think, in charge of CPC in Newton. She's got a big job there.
Okay. Okay. So I will do more investigating. Okay, so we can move on. So we'll just keep working on that. The historic marker program. We had talked last time about including the wife's name. Do folks have strong feeling about that?
I think
It strikes me it's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Sometimes it's just adequate to say the Sawfield House. I mean, everybody knows it's, really important property.
everybody knows it's Brett.
But I mean, I do think, there may be a case, like if you were naming the Old Manse, I think clearly the women who lived at the Old Manse are really important. I mean, we're not going to name that because it's a trustee property, but that would be an example where the wife is very prominent. Otherwise, it's maybe just the last name. So what do you think? I mean, is it worth a change? I
think it'd be interesting to know how the Park Service is looking at this. I know it's come up.
Okay.
But maybe we don't have to figure this out tonight.
Okay. Okay, well then.
On the form, can we solicit the person submitting the form to include that research, and then?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That is good.
Decide.
So update the form. We can just do that on our own to,
You count just the first wife or second, or how do you do
well,
that?
Include all,
Melania,
all
That's all.
what's the
family
middle
members.
one in there? Marla, Ivana, Marla, Melania House.
To include all family members.
Yeah, I mean, because that would be kind of crazy, but, to consider whether the spouses would be,
Well, how does the town name a historic structure anyway? I think there's a protocol in the National Park Service that it's named after, well, sometimes it's hyphenated, the Stowe Jones House or the Stowe this, that, or the other. It's hyphenated.
yeah,
So
but isn't that usually because it's a change in ownership, not the wife and,
yeah, but how do they change? It's not the last owner, obviously, or it'd be, you know, Hovagimians or blah, blah, blah. But East Quarter Schoolhouse is East Court. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they have a whole naming protocol that would be helpful. Maybe.
because we don't, we just have, it's very subjective. They suggest something and we react and say yes or
Oh,
what do you consider.
worth digging out. I know I remember vaguely looking at naming protocols. But
Well,
I can't tell you anything about it.
would you know how to go snooping around to find out?
Mhm.
Okay, maybe,
I'll put
okay,
that on my list. but
okay.
Not the top 10.
Okay, so one other thought though, one to consider, because we changed the, our demolition delay has to consider a property 50 years or older. Is that worth changing? Because in the historic marker program as it is now, the age of the home has to be at least 75 years old. Do we want to stay with that? Or we would consider it?
I don't know.
50 is kind of young still.
I think it's really young for someone who hasn't seen that in a while.
Oh, that's funny. You are not that old.
I am so too. Okay, well, okay. There doesn't seem to be a lot of enthusiasm. So let's
Think about it.
think about it. Because I do feel like it's a case by case basis. I'm female and I want to represent my sex, but I don't think it's not that critical on something like this, particularly the
Well, I
property.
also like Jesse's idea, which that could be implemented right away. What was the role of the wife of, Mr. So-and-so? I don't know how you want to phrase that, or in some cases, maybe it was the daughter, like didn't Lincoln's daughter take over, or somebody's daughter took over when the wife of the president died?
Well,
And she was hugely important.
yeah, but it's still, I think we remember the president, not the
Oh,
daughter.
absolutely.
I know,
Yeah.
but
So
yeah.
then you have to develop the criteria, and
Um,
that's an undertaking.
I think they had looked into it in Waltham and they had found that most places go by the name that's on the deed when the house is built. And that's during many periods, that's the man. But of course, during other periods, it was the woman. So, but then that leaves out sometimes the most important person who lived there, which makes it historically significant. So I think that's where the hyphen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds broad.
So it still sounds like a case by case basis that we might say, please consider other residents of the home, the spouse or a prominent child or
Something.
I mean, that's why I asked about the George Brooks property because he was the son of Mary Merrick Brooks. Mary Merrick, was a very, very important abolitionist. So I thought it was important to highlight the Merrick name. So George Merrick Brooks.
Yeah, it's interesting how many anti-slavery societies were women's anti-slavery societies, where Frederick Douglass made his famous 4th of July speech was in the New York Ladies Anti-Slavery Society.
Yeah. So that's
we're involved, definitely.
So, okay, well, I mean, I guess basically what we're asking is the person who's making the application just needs to do some homework. Interestingly, we direct them to read about it in the Historic Resources Master Plan. And you know, but eventually, as we've just said, it will become a more, as they say, robust resource online. Okay, so let's move on. I think we've discussed that one to death to consider. Well, the preservation awards, I haven't reached out like I promised I would to Annette Bagley, a couple people that helped last time. I still need to do that. The idea that we would have an outside committee work with us to help send out an RFP, a request for proposals. I think there are 8 or 9 categories of preservation, and then having some kind of a event ceremony next spring, maybe at the townhouse, now that we can have meetings there, I hope. So that's just something for next spring. I don't see it as a lot of heavy lifting on our part right now, but the number one thing was whether or not Annette Bagley and Valerie Kincaid, who are both former members of the Historical Commission who launched this program, about 5 years ago, if they're willing to help out again. So that's my assignment, sorry. Nancy, do you want to give us an update about the Battle Road Scenic Byway?
Just very quickly, I think I reported this last time, but it's important. The Byway Committee submitted a grant for almost $1 million under the National Scenic Byway Program, and for improvements along the byway. Lexington put in for construction of a kind of a fancy crosswalk in Lexington near a hazardous intersection. Lincoln wanted to connect 2 town roads to the national park. So those really are very local. Arlington didn't, Arlington at the last minute put in $200,000 for parking lot improvements and an air conditioning system for their visitor center. Concord submitted something for the byway that would go from Route 128 in Lexington all the way out to Barrett's Road or Barrett's Mill Farm in Concord. And so that's it's about half of the byway's 16 or 17 mile length. And it would involve replacing deteriorated traditional split rail fencing, carefully clearing stone walls that are overgrown or hampered by fallen trees and other garbage. So byway clearing, and then some limited landscape clearing and invasives management. And that's some of this needs to be coordinated with the national park, because they're doing some of this fencing and stonewall work as part of their Great American Outdoors Act. But
Nancy, that's what I was going to ask you. Does any of the Outdoor Act overlap with the Scenic Byway project?
It doesn't overlap if it's perfectly articulated. I was in making the request for the grant. I was relying on their earlier strategic resources management plan.
And who's got the right of way here?
So now, well, it'll be DPW in Concord, it'll be Mass DOT in the areas along Lincoln. Hi, Margie. And in areas where national parkland is involved, it'll be close coordination with somebody like Margie Brown, who just joined the meeting. So there's $600,000 earmarked for that. There are some interesting things involved with how the final application came together. If you've never done a federal grant application, consider yourself lucky. So we'll see. We'll know by fall. All the applications from around the country are in. We know that the Kings Highway on Cape Cod submitted one through the Cape Cod Commission. And that's likely to be a very sophisticated application. So we'll see. It would be great if we got some or all of this, and we'll know by fall.
So I have a question. Who manages the money? Like if you've got work being done in the town, not national park work, because I don't know how to do that, but is money reimbursed to the town?
I'm trying to figure that out, and I'm hoping we have agreement from MAPC that they would be the fiscal agent. Should we get this money, it might be easier for them because they wouldn't, if the towns got an allocation of funding, maybe the national park, although probably the national park's got enough work on its hands. But if the towns would management. So Lincoln has two little paths that are going to connect to a presumed crossing of Route 2A that isn't clear what that's going to be yet. So that would be relatively easy to manage compared with something that runs through 3 towns and sometimes weaves back and forth with the national park. But we've tried to separate but we need to look at that again now that there's much more specific information about what the park is planning for landscape work, because there's a lot of stone wall work there too. So maybe we can shift more of that to some of the sad roadsides along the byway in Concord. So we'll see how that works out. But Mass Highway might be able to easily take the contracting of replacement of split rail fencing where it falls within their right of way, or stone wall work which falls within their right of way.
So that means that some of the money that you have, if you get the grant, that money would be sent to the Mass Highway for that work. So I'm just trying to understand.
It goes to the applicant, which is Mass Highway, and I don't know how this works exactly. I'm going to meet with Concord's MAPC rep, Keith Bergman,
Okay.
soon. So hopefully I'll know more about the mechanics of it, and we'll know by fall.
Okay. I don't have any update about the Thoreau Street District. You remember what this is about, whether or not to help or to encourage or be supportive of the young lady who, she's a graduate student who is interested in helping to move along National Register applications for some of those properties. I mean, it starts with whether or not the owner of those properties are even interested. And I didn't know what is your view about our role in this?
Ugh. Does she have a faculty advisor who's competent to help her with this?
I don't know. I mean, but even
that would be the best thing. If she's doing this is she doing it as part of a program?
Well, no, I think she was doing this out of interest in somehow preserving the streetscape of sorts in the Thoreau district. So remember, it's the Concord Provisions Building, I think the Priest Cleaner Building.
Yeah, the depot.
The depot, which is, fine. But in order to pursue that, she does need to get permission. The owner of those properties needs to want this to happen. That's the threshold, number one, whether she's got an advisor or not. Because it's not like they're town owned or owned by her.
Well, that's Giovanni too, I believe.
They own the
That's
depot.
period.
They own all of those. They own the depot, right?
Where Karma is, and the one next to it. With the
Like who owns the Provisions Building and who owns the Priest Cleaner Building?
those I don't know.
Yeah, so at any rate, so this is a good idea if she's if she would like to pursue this, if she gets the permission from the owners to pursue this, and has faculty advisor, I'm sure we could ask her.
I don't, that's supervising something like that's not a little thing, probably. So
Yeah, well, I'm not suggesting that we're involved with it. I'm just,
Oh, okay.
Well, except for the fact that I think we would want to either endorse this or be
Oh.
mute. I mean, that's what I'm kind of asking.
Oh. Well, I think it's a good effort. As long as it doesn't embroil us in supervising the work.
Yeah, I just, given the, I mean, I'm thinking, given the sort of the high tension, high drama over the last town meeting, when this
Yeah.
article came up, I'm not
Yeah.
sure what position we should be taking. I just don't know.
Well, maybe she should come back to the commission after she's touched base with the owners and see what their receptivity might be to it. Since we don't know any more about it than they would
Yeah,
at this point.
yeah. Anne, are you familiar with this? Does this ringing any bell with you?
Is she a
I'm
student?
sorry, I did listen to the last meeting, so I did see her presentation. I haven't looked into that area. I mean, maybe she would just want to focus on, updating Form Bs or that sort of thing, which in that case, you wouldn't need the permission of the owner. If you're just doing a survey form, identifying, just writing up a history. But you're right, if there's anything beyond that, you would need the owner's permission.
So that looks like step one.
Yeah, I mean, her goal was to get National Register status. That's what, her pursuit. That's what she expressed. She's
Right,
done
and the
some,
first step in doing that would be to get a robust Form B
Yeah.
for each building.
Yeah.
So should I respond to her and say that we've discussed it and that's what our recommendation is?
I
Yeah.
wouldn't go that far yet.
Okay,
But
I
just tell her what
haven't
the
even looked
step
at-
is.
Sorry?
Just tell her what the step is. Make sure she's clear about the first step.
And there probably are Form Bs already existing, so. And I don't know what was checked off on those forms, whether it is eligible or not to be, yeah. But you certainly need the permission of the owner to do that.
To propose National Register status.
Exactly.
yeah.
Right. Interesting.
Well, I'm not entirely sure what I should do then.
No
Here.
recommendation, just tell her what the first step is and how to
Look
do it.
into whether or not there's actually a Form B has been, these Form Bs would have been filed with the Mass Historical?
Right, they would be available in Macris.
Okay,
So she would know that. And I'm sure she's looked at them too, if they exist.
okay. I can't remember her presentation, so I'm embarrassed. I can't fully
Me
remember all
No,
that she
that's okay.
said. Okay. All right, so then the final thing is minutes. Thank you very much, Anne. Does anyone have any additions or corrections for the minutes? If not, would someone please move to accept the minutes of June 9th?
Can I just make one teeny thing? I don't have correction necessarily to the minutes, but I want to point out the proper name of the national park. It's Minuteman, 2 words, National Historical Park. So that may be in the minutes somewhere too. But I highlighted it on the agenda.
Oh,
I'll make sure that that's,
yes, I know. Nancy is a stickler for that. I can attest to that.
Important in
understand.
some quarters.
It's important. Okay, so do I have a motion?
I move to accept the minutes as written, except for if it refers to Minuteman National Historical Park, but I don't see it. I
don't-
was looking for it in the minutes, so.
No. So a second, Alan, I saw your hand.
Second.
So all in favor, Nancy, Alan,
I,
Rebecca is not here. Melissa, I, Jesse, weigh in.
I would vote aye.
Thank you. So the minutes of June 9th, 2022 are accepted. Our next meeting is August, oh geez, 14, August 14th? Is that, no, August
9th, wasn't it?
No, it's August 12th, excuse me. It should be the second Thursday, August,
Oh, okay.
the second Thursday in August, which I'm presuming
Okay,
is
that's
August
after the August 9th meeting is the select board and the HDC.
No,
Or
planning.
planning board.
So
planning
I,
board,
I
yeah.
will learn more about that and we will send out a notice to everybody about that. It is not, they're not expecting a joint meeting, but I think they are asking members of the commission to participate. And this will be about the draft language, these rules and regulations for the scenic road bylaw.
Okay.
So, I will be sending to you next couple of days some of the language that I've come up with, and please, mess around with it and, send it, we're gonna send it all through. Yeah, well, I guess it's okay. Isn't it okay if I just send it to all
Yeah,
each
why not?
time? This is just a working on,
Great, as long as you don't deliberate through email to all, then
Yeah.
that should be.
yeah,
fine.
so maybe we should send it to you, Anne. Because I just want to share information, but if you respond, that's deliberating, right?
No. Yeah, oh, yeah, if you
Yeah.
respond with your opinion and your thinking.
Right, okay, so you can send it to me and I'll send it to everyone. So and I guess don't deliberate as a group. And would you like it up on the website as well, or is it really just an internal piece for your board?
Well, what I'd like, the idea, I mean, this is when it's really hard, and particularly in a Zoom meeting. In past, sometimes we have done deliberating when we've actually, remember, we've sat in a room together, we've had the stuff on the screen and we went line by line together. It's very hard to do it here.
We can still do that.
Yeah, so I guess what I would just ask each of you to be prepared to do this for the August 9th. And if you can't attend, please send it to Anne so that it could be available for discussion with the planning board. Because they're going to be talking about the same stuff. The idea is to, come up with better definitions for these different categories.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So just send all your suggestions to Anne. How's that? Is that okay, Anne?
Yes, that sounds good.
I have a question for Anne. Are we done with that?
Yeah, so yes, well, I can't say the meeting's adjourned yet because we're still deliberating. Yes.
I have a question for Anne. Is Elizabeth still planning to put up the documents related to the Battle Road Scenic Byways grant application? She had said that she meant to do that, but they're not up there yet. And
I haven't heard that and I haven't seen them either myself.
Okay.
So I
She
can talk to her.
has them. And the other thing was, what's the status of the PR for Wright Tower? What's the latest document, if anything?
Right, so I was away on vacation last week and did send my comments and your comments to the attorney. And so he's going through them and will put together the final document to bring to you all to discuss at a board meeting.
Okay,
At our next meeting?
I don't know his time frame.
But he's working on making revisions that you noted and that other people noted.
Correct.
Okay. And then
Would you like to see what I sent to him?
I'd love to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to. And maybe, I don't know, maybe everybody's following this or maybe not. Maybe Alan should see. And then could you check with Elizabeth on those? I'm getting questions about can the committee see what was submitted for the grant on behalf of the committee? And I've asked Elizabeth today if there's if we should be looking for something more official that DOT forwarded. So that's just another question, not directly related to the Historical Commission, but the PR is.
Okay, I will check with her.
Thank you.
Well, also, before that, the preservation restriction actually gets, becomes, in fact, we still have to get it again. So we're gonna see it, if not in August, by
Yeah.
September,
Yeah.
as a whole group. So, okay. Well, with that, unless there are any questions, I think Carlin, is that you? Are there any people in the audience? Hello.
Carlin
Do you have?
Hi,
Would you like-
Carlin must have some thoughts.
I have one question, and I appreciate today's meeting. It concerns the Historic Resources Master Plan, and I'm Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End, for the record. I'm really interested in hearing about this master plan, and Melissa, I'm probably going to call you offline just to get some more updates, because it sounds fascinating, since
Yeah.
I can already see some more uses for that kind of information. So thanks.
I would point out, we use that term because that's the name of the document that we realized needed updating, but as Ann points out, it is not a plan. It isn't a plan. It is, we describe it as sort of a portal to historic resources of Concord. And a whole lot of stuff can go flow through there.
Okay,
So thank you. Okay.
sounds great, thanks.
We're happy to talk to you more. Thank you, everybody, very, very much. Welcome, Ann, to your first meeting. And it is before 9 o'clock. I just want to point out, it isn't all of 2 hours consumed.
Bravo.
So
Bye, bye, everybody.
good night, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Next time in person.